We are rolling. I am here now with Lynn Pascoe, who is the, I guess I can call you the highest ranking American at the UN, the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs. I guess how would you describe that job?
Well, basically we are trying to do for the Secretary General the political work of the UN in most countries that are not involved with peacekeeping and peacekeeping in general. And we also do a lot of work on mediation, so we're trying to go around and fix problems if we can.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were prior to this job, you were a U.S. ambassador to Indonesia?
Yes, I was.
Excellent. So, you know, I kind of want to talk to you about this sort of hot topic of the day, the Gaza flotilla incident. I guess, does your office, to what extent is your office involved in, I guess, mediating what's happening or following what's happening?
Well, we've been involved in Middle Eastern affairs quite a lot since the early days, since 1948 actually. The UN has been fairly deeply involved. We have an office in Jerusalem, and we are very active in Gaza because the UNRWA, the UN organization there, feeds between 70 and 80% of the people. So we have a strong vested interest in what goes on in Gaza.
And I wanted to ask you about this sort of question of the day, which is, you know, who or what will be investigating this incident? You have the presidential statement from the Security Council calling for an investigation, although it's unclear as to what body will be doing this investigating. It seemed to me that the United States is insisting that Israel conduct the investigation. Some other countries have interpreted that presidential statement to mean that the UN or some international body should do the investigating. What are your thoughts?
Well, like lots of things at the UN Security Council, that was a compromise and negotiated out. It was left intentionally ambiguous. So there's one side of the argument that is insisting that we immediately do a big investigation. Other sides think that we could be helping with an investigation. What seems to me the most important thing is a really credible and impartial investigation in which you get views from all sides in it. So that means you have to have Israeli cooperation as well as Turkish cooperation. We are working on looking at how this should go, who should do it, and what should be done. It's a bit complicated, but that's what we're paid for. So
I mean, do you think that Israel should lead the investigation?
Well, I think it's a question. One of the signs in there is credibility, of course, and a part of the world, and I've seen what the Israelis can do on investigation, do a quite good job. But much of the world probably wouldn't accept just a pure Israeli investigation as actually a credible one. So we are working our way on that subject right now. We'll see where it comes out.
I guess, you know, along those same lines, you know, it seems that this incident has put the sort of blockade of Gaza into, you know, a new light. I mean, how are your feelings? What are your feelings on the blockade? Is it justified? Should it be lifted?
We have argued for a very long time that the blockade should be lifted. The Secretary General has repeatedly said it should be lifted. We don't really think it's even in Israel's interest because it is not, in some respects, a true blockade. The Israelis let humanitarian items go through, but far more than that is what goes through back and forth through the tunnels. So if you're on the streets of Gaza, you can buy almost anything, but it is illegally imported in that sense, underneath the ground through tunnels. We can't therefore use that material. So we have been arguing and debating, and the Israelis have loosened up a bit recently, that we need to get our materials through to build the schools, to work on some housing, sewage, other projects that we have in Gaza that need to be done.
So you mentioned earlier part of your job is to sort of kind of look at crisis spots. I'm wondering, you know, from your perspective, from your pretty high perch, are there parts of the world, are there brewing political crises or humanitarian crises that, you know, we're not paying close enough attention to, that may be slipping under the radar?
Well, one of our concerns has been in recent years is that we need more attention to the drug problem in West Africa, for example, and some of the instability there. We spend a lot of time on East Africa and Somalia. Again, we've tried to take a situation that for 19 years there was no government, a very terrible situation, a lot of people being killed. Tried to work out a process to build a government. Now we're trying to work with the African Union to get security for that government and to try to help build its own strength. The people of Somalia need more than just to be forgotten and left into some darkness to start fighting each other all of the time. They need international help.
So Somalia's one, but you mentioned the drug problem in East Africa. What is that?
In West Africa, there's a serious problem of transshipment of cocaine from South America as the shipments of cocaine to the United States tend to come through the Caribbean or Central America, shipments to Europe tend to come through West Africa, and that, as in any time has a terrible destabilizing effect on the countries.
Which countries in particular are seen as transit points?
Well, it's one of our problems is at the moment is Guinea-Bissau, where we're having difficult problems. But as you know, drugs bounce. The dealers bounce from one country to the other. So if this week they're having a problem in one place, they'll go to a remote place elsewhere. A plane, for example, in northern Mali was abandoned after they brought in the drugs. Took it. There's so much profit you can get the whole plane. Just destroy the plane and that's it. Go off and make your money.
So I guess what's sort of the UN solution? Is there sort of an opportunity for international cooperation to combat this problem? I guess what do you see as
we would like the kind of cooperation there is in the Caribbean, for example. That's mostly American-led. Obviously, West Africa should be European-led, and it's coming along, but there's a lot that needs to be done, and it's sort of nascent at this point. I think generally also, I should say, there is a terrorist threat in the Sahel region that seems to be getting worse, and it's a real problem for us. And then, of course, we have problems like in Nepal. We're very deeply involved as they're trying to get their government together, and so we deal in a lot of other countries.
I guess can you just expand upon the terrorist problem in the Sahel? Sort of, you hear about Al Qaeda in the Maghreb and all that, but sort of to what extent have they really gained a foothold? In what countries are you most worried?
Well, I think they have gained a foothold in that band across Africa that has always been a large smuggling area. There's been a lot of nefarious activities of various kinds going on there. And when the terrorists moved in, they started working out deals with these guys. So now it's a little hard to figure out who is whom sometimes in this process. But overall, it's a threat to the countries in the region, and a very serious one.
Yeah.
As you can have a threat in Somalia, as you can have a threat in other countries that we're trying to help, not to mention only South Asia.
And can I ask you, I guess, something maybe you keep your UN official hat on, but as I said, you are the highest-ranking American at the UN. What's been your and you're appointed during the Bush administration. What has been your experience or in sort of how the different administrations have approached the UN? Have you noticed a change in sort of how you do your work or how the UN operates with the new administration in office?
Well, of course, any administration has their views towards various international organizations or countries. The Bush administration, certainly by the time that I came, was working quite actively with the UN and trying to. The Secretary General, for example, regularly would go to the White House, and President Bush would come, and they would have discussions on where things were heading. The Obama administration, as you know, has made it a major plank of their effort to cooperate more with international bodies, with the UN and others. And so they have stepped up. They've got the payments, their arrears where they were behind that the UN paid off. They have been more activist in using the body, trying to find solutions here. It's fine too. It's very good.
I guess your office is, I guess, sometimes called sort of the State Department of the UN. It's sort of the political arm of the UN. I guess is you being an American helpful, harmful, or neutral to your job? In some parts of the world, the UN is seen as sort of just an extension of the United States. Does that? I mean, do you have to play that down, or do you just sort of?
Well, what I have found, there's been a lot less concern about that than I thought there might be when I came. Basically the question is, and it's not hard for me to put on my UN role. I work for Secretary General Bond. That's quite understandable and quite easy. I think the real question is, what do we accomplish? How good are we out there? Are we doing what we need to be doing? And people appreciate that, I think. If they see us helping in countries, they really don't care whether the head of it's an American or something else. What they really want to see is results out of the UN, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Pascoe.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think we